reason other than winter. We do a number of these surveys, and we try to do them in the winter, but in many cases, the survey is actually done in the spring or the fall. And what we find is the lowest levels occur in January, the dead of winter time frame, and then the levels tend to be slightly higher at kind of the intermediate season, particularly when leaves are on the trees and when they start graduating. So there's a likelihood that the level will be a little bit higher in the spring and the fall. But what you don't want to do is measure in the summertime with those incidents. You can just forget that. We just happen to measure when there's just horrible conditions here.
The population density is higher here from May to October.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying to me that if you did studies in the spring or fall, then the level would be higher than the one you're using, therefore we should stick with winter because it's going to be lower?
Yeah, I would guess that we would come out with a little bit higher background than one of those.
You wouldn't come out with lower? I'm asking.
Well, no, there wouldn't be any reason for it to be lower. But you never know until you test. That's why we have to do a test. So nothing wrong with that. But I would, just based on all the different surveys we've done all through different seasons, what we find is that the dead of winter is usually that's about as wide as it gets. It certainly would hurt to measure. Okay, modeling indicates usually outcome that nobody's going to see a sound level increase more than 6.
Does the DEC do anything with low frequency or any other things, or is it just this?
No, I don't think the guidelines specifically address low frequency. Okay, yeah, now in absolute terms, now in the latest version of the assessment, which we just finished, we talk about what the project's going to do in absolute terms. The DEC is a relative thing, but then we've also included a plot in there that just shows, forget about the background, forget about all the dependency on wind, we just forget about the background, and just plot out what the sound levels are going to be. They're going to be 42, or in most cases much less, at all the houses in the project area. And as we saw in that table from the reaction to completed projects, 42 is kind of down in the low end where there usually isn't a whole lot of adverse reaction.
Now when you say all homes, that includes homes of landowners who are participating?
Yeah, there's no distinction between participants and non-participants. The highest level of any house is around here. And there's a big change in impact from 40 to 50. It doesn't sound like a big range, but at 40, the level is so low that, as we saw, there wasn't a whole lot of risk. But at 50, there's almost universal adverse relations. So you want to stay as close to 40 as possible. Ideally, we recommend the ideal design target is 40 or less in all houses. Come close here.
Did you plot? Did you do a plot of 40 or less?
Yeah. There is a plot in there that shows out to 40. What homes are going to be within that. And the point is that most other projects in New York and elsewhere often do have levels in the high 40s and 50s, and that's where there's a lot of complaints. So, when I say a lot, I mean, it's only a few percent. The project's not going to be inaudible. The biggest complaint, and a lot of completed projects is, people say, well, we were told we weren't gonna hear anything, and now we hear something. And see, but if they'd just been told they're gonna hear something, they wouldn't be bothered by it. But they're all, said, we were told we weren't gonna hear anything. Well, that's not the case, because you have to be pretty far away before you can't hear it at all. So it's going to be audible to varying degrees. Sometimes it won't be, you can't hear it. Other times it'll be making some funky noise because the wind is blowing weird. No reason for any concern about low frequency or infrasonic noise. No reason to believe any kind of health impact will result. And that's it. All right. Any further questions?
Donnie, do you have any questions?
No.
No. Brooks?
I think I do. I wanted to ask, is what you're saying here this evening identical to, or in what ways is it different from what was submitted in the seeker?
The draft EIS?
Well, there are two things, the draft and the supplemental.
Yeah, there was no real changes. We just completed the final version of the report, and all that took into account was some minor turbine moves, updates to the site plan, and then I did add a plot specifically looking at and talking about the absolute levels from the project, irrespective of wind speed, threshold, and so on. But there's very little of any substance that's changed.
You understand from my viewpoint, I'm on the town board and I'm trying to make a sincere effort to understand it. And it's a new area and it's quantitative and technological, but I'm getting some familiarity with it. The town has an engineering company bringing a car. They hired their own sound Cabinetachi from Boston, and they came up and gave us an instructional in which they disagree with your assessment of the.
I know, I've talked to.
So let me finish my question, if you would. What is your answer to that?
Well, I think his thrust is that you should just use the lowest sound level as the background, like irrespective of the wind. And I don't agree with that because of that chart that we saw where the wind and the sound are locked together. I don't think that can be disregarded and you just take the, because when levels of 25 or 28 dBA happen, it's usually when it's real calm, still conditions, and the turbines are probably just sitting there, not even working. Because remember, the wind speed we're using is the wind speed that's up at the rotor height. It's not the ground level wind speed. It's the wind that the turbines are going to see. That's what we use. That's what we're tying the sound levels to. So it's actual turbine operation rather than just what it is at ground level, what the wind speed is at ground.
So be patient with me, one final thing. Is there some basic number that you have as a sort of an average ambient for Cape Vincent that you're using?
Well, the number that we come up with is that 37 dBA that occurs when the wind is blowing at 6 meters per second. That's for design purposes. That's what we're saying.
Using a 37.
37, yeah. Because that's what the data says.
In my reading, I saw the ISO, the International Standards Organization, says most rural environments are less than that. And I wondered if you disagree with them.
No, I don't disagree with that because it depends when if you measure under calm conditions, and we did, because we took 2,000 measurements at all of the positions. We measured under all different conditions. And there's plenty of times when it's 25. But that's because the wind is calm and there's nothing going on. So yeah, quiet levels do happen. No
So
question about it.
from my viewpoint, I'm not trying to be obstructionist, but I am trying to be responsible